Good afternoon. My name is Jason Vasser-Elong. I am the museum educator here at the Contemporary Art Museum St. Louis, and I want to welcome you to our artist talk featuring Summer Brooks. I'm going to open up with just a brief information about the TMS program, give you a little bit of information about Summer, and then we'll jump into some questions from some of the students that interacted with her during the summer program. So, the Teen Museum Studies program is a summer intensive internship that engages high school students in direct exposure to museum careers, develops collaboration and critical thinking skills, and others, and offers the chance to select and work with a St. Louis based artist to organize an exhibition that premieres at CAM in September. This intensive program provides avenues for artistic engagement beyond studio practice and hands on experience working with artists and creative peers. The 2021 program runs from June 30th through August 6th and aims to be held on site with COVID protocols in place, including mask use, social distancing, and capacity restrictions. We are so thrilled to have Summer Brooks join us as our artist. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about her. So Summer Brooks was born in Okinawa, Japan, and recently completed her senior exhibition, Black Magic, at the McKendree University Gallery of Art in Lebanon, Illinois, in 2021. Her work has also been included in a variety of exhibitions at McKendree's Gallery, as well as Art St. Louis, and the Albrecht Kemper Museum of Art in St. Joseph, Missouri. Brooks is a recipient of the Belger Crane Foundation residency in Kansas City, Missouri, and the NCECA Multicultural Fellowship. She received a BA from McKendree University in 2021. So her exhibition, The New Garden Variety, explores Blackness and perceptions of beauty. Through her exhibition, Summer Brooks creates an open and inviting space for diverse audiences to encounter the beauty of Blackness. Brooks says each piece is sensual and tactile, almost radiating an attractive aura, end quote. She strives through her work to connect different cultures and to celebrate diversity in the human form. She believes that Black is beautiful and should be presented as a spectrum rather than a strictly constrained notion of beauty. Brooks wields unconventional materials like spray foam, terracotta clay, and India ink to reimagine traditional notions of beauty. By incorporating the royal colors purple and gold, Brooks signifies the divinity and difference. Teen Museum Studies participants selected Brooks after a competitive application review process. Brooks was chosen because her work challenges harmful narratives of beauty standards and provides the opportunity to engage in deeper dialogue around how we see one another. Teen Museum Studies worked directly with Brooks to organize and implement the exhibition as part of the 6-week summer program. We are thrilled here at the Contemporary Art Museum to welcome Summer Brooks. Summer, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your art?
Hi. I just want to say that I'm really, excited to be here, even though it's over Zoom. And I've been doing art for like about half of my life. I started when I was really young, but I started in ceramics about 3 years ago when I was in college. I found that I really love this tactile material. It was just like I've always been doing sculpture for a while, but it was always digital. And when I found ceramics, I finally found that physical element that I've always been looking for. I can create anything from like a block of clay, and that was just so magical to me. I started out making like blobbish forms. I was kind of scared to go into making faces and you know bust and female figures. Even though I had been doing it for a while, I'd started sculpting digitally when I was about 13 using a program called ZBrush. And that program allowed me to make sculptures on my computer using a tablet, but it was never physical. I mean, I could like 3D print them, but there was something kind of disconnecting about the work I was creating digitally and the physical elements of art that I wanted. And so yeah, I was kind of scared to make faces at first in ceramics, but I had decided that, you know what, it's better to challenge myself than always wondering like if I could do it. And so probably around like my first end of my first year, like 2 year, getting into my second year doing ceramics, I decided to create a bust. And I just fell in love with the process. Even though it didn't go as smoothly as I had planned, I was just like, this is awesome. This is great. And that really made me decide to really pursue this avenue of ceramics and see where it could take me. You know, glazes can tell such a beautiful story, and so can raw clay. And at that point, I realized that, okay, I can make bust and I can create things in ceramics, but the content of my work was still kind of empty to me digitally. Like I found like, oh, okay, I like creating Black women and, doing creating women. But then when I got to the physical side, I said, okay, I still like doing busts, I still like creating women, but what is this kind of like, what is going to separate me from another artist kind of doing this thing? And it took me, I was kind of scared again to kind of go forward in my career making a statement, because I just felt like, if I'm going to talk about Blackness, am I able to? And this fear kind of came from being a military kid. I grew up in many different places with a lot of different people, but when I came to the States, I was reminded by my peers often that like I wasn't from here and that, I wasn't Black enough. And so I got in my head that like there's something I can't talk about being Black. I can't discuss these things in my work because I'm not from here, even though, I am an American. And I've lived here since I was in middle school. There was just this kind of barrier I had placed artificially. And it was really blocking my creative process. I only thought I could just make pretty aesthetic work. And that was just something that I love creating aesthetic work, but I really needed to push the content of my work. And so, what really kind of sparked this interest was when I saw Ebony G. Patterson's work at the Contemporary Art Museum. I was like, okay, her work is like so amazing. It has like the aesthetics, the materials that she's using, they're so beautiful. And I could do something like that. That is totally possible. And when I read her statements about her work, I was like, oh, wait, she's like discussing things that have to deal with Blackness as well, you know? And that kind of got the wheels turning. And I was like, okay, maybe, I should kind of dive into these, topics that are a little uncomfortable. And that's when I started to look back and say, okay, what experiences do I have that I can talk about? I was told that my skin was too dark. I was told that my nose was too big, or my lips were too big, or that my body was like gross or whatever. And these were all things that contributed to me. And they were all things that a lot of Black people experience. And it's always a part of our stories, growing up. And it really didn't hit home until the summer of 2020, when George Floyd had tragically been murdered by the police. And I was just like in tears. It really struck a chord with me. I'd never seen and been a part of a movement that big. And I was just like, this is the moment that I need to discuss my voice. I need to discuss my experiences, because when we are silent, we lose power. Regardless of if I grew up here, regardless of if I just moved here, my skin is still Black, and I am always going to be considered a target. And that is so deep rooted in our society that, Black isn't beautiful, that we have placed stereotypes on especially Black women. I've been told by so many people that I am, or not so many people, but I've been told by people that I'm aggressive just because my skin is dark, right? Even though I'm not that type of person. So these things that, these words that people have said have really brewed inside my mind at that point. And I was like, this is the moment that my voice matters. And it doesn't matter. I need to create work that deals with Blackness and Black beauty and telling people that you are beautiful, and that Black women are beautiful. We got to stop with these stereotypes because they're so, so harmful to many, many young Black women and older Black women and Black men as well. And so I had wanted to capture from Ebony G. Patterson's work, I wanted to capture using kind of like unconventional materials. She used like paper and glitter and a lot of things that, it's like flashy things. And I was really interested in that. And I wanted to really express Blackness through just the color Black because, we're always told like your skin is dark and, you know, um, there's like you're only Black, right? And so what better way to showcase being Black than just using India ink and using terracotta and dunking, literally blackwashing my figures in India ink and turning them into Black figures. And I'm sorry, I just realized the PowerPoint wasn't going. So let me just go ahead and share that real quick.
That's fine. You raised a lot of good points just now, and we can tell as you get your PowerPoint together, we can definitely, it resonates that you're passionate about your work. It really is. And so here we are. Your
Yeah.
PowerPoint is presenting.
So here is, a figure that is fully coated in Black. The figure is actually, it's actually a face. It's a faceplate. It's really hard to see through photographs, but I had used unconventional materials here to express how Blackness is beautiful. Like you go up to this piece and you're like automatically intrigued by the afro, by, oh, there's actually a face in here, and it's really mesmerizing and beautiful. And this kind of, alluring element to my work was really, I really wanted to do this because I see that media sometimes really likes to depict Black women as like not desirable and are like darker skin. We have to go with lighter skinned people, and magazines only show, or sometimes magazines even lighten our skin. And so this was really important to just show figures being Black. And the use of purple throughout my work and also gold was just like incredibly important. This use of gold showcases that these figures are royalty, because often we're broken down and being told that like, you're not worth anything, or you're just another person, or and that's totally not true. And especially when it comes to our hair and our physical appearances, we're told that you don't fit into this commonality, and our hair is like royalty. It's beautiful and it can transform into so many different things that we should respect it and we should glorify it. And it is a beautiful thing. It comes from our bodies. It's totally natural, and it can be so many different, you can braid it, you can have an afro, you can wear it in all types of styles, and we should celebrate that. And the color purple was also used as a way to symbolize royalty. It really means that on the inside, we are royal, and that we should treat ourselves that way. And when we present ourselves as royalty, when we present ourselves as more than just, the common person, more than just, I'm just another person, you really start to exude confidence within yourself. And kind of talking about the common variety, the garden variety means a common person, a common place, a common thing. And the new garden variety challenges how we see diversity. I was talking previously about how the media sometimes only depicts lighter skinned people. And this is a very prominent issue. And if we don't actually address it, then we aren't going to start seeing more diverse people. And the new garden variety, really, I really want people to understand that, if you don't see yourself in media and if you don't see yourself as like the common, then you have to raise your voice and say like, hey, I exist, I am there, and you should represent me. And representation is so important. Just don't have like a Black person and then just have them be like lighter skin. We are all different shades and colors and we come from all different places, and that should be represented as well. So I also use these little crowns, and these crowns are really important to me because I actually do wear them in my hair, and a lot of people wear them, a lot of Black women wear them in their hair as hair accessories. And so it's a way to deeper connect with the Black community, but also a way to show like they're like little tiny pieces of royalty that I placed upon my figures to remind you that they are royal and that they are, much more than just a Black figure. Um, and so getting into Don't Touch, this piece was really important to me because I wanted to showcase in a different light like, how Black women, Black men, and Black people are we're kind of used as like a spectacle, or we're kind of seen as a spectacle sometimes. We're seen as this thing that, you can't touch. Like our hair, for instance, is a big thing. People want to touch our hair. They want to touch, like if we're wearing a certain clothing article, and they want to feel it. It's like we're on display constantly, and it's not okay. And people constantly will touch our hair. If we don't tell them no, if we don't overtly state it, then we will be kind of violated in this way. And I, for the life of me, cannot understand why people decide to touch our hair. We're not like, that should be something that you have to ask consent for if you want to touch their hair. And what is the point of touching hair anyways? And so Don't Touch shows that in a very blatant way, that like this cake has been violated. Even though you shouldn't touch cakes, that's something that you eat, and that's something that's typically on display for somebody else, and yet you are touching it and violating it in this way. Relaxer is another piece that I wanted to specifically touch on. Now, relaxer has hooks coming out digging through the hair. And through the hooks, you can see it bleeding gold. And the hooks were really important for me to kind of make a point that when we are like, our hair is violated and when our hair is kind of touched, it's like someone's like clawing and grabbing at our afros, our braids, or whatever. And it kind of makes us like, internally we hold on to that and we're like, why do people do this? And so it's bleeding this gold. It's kind of like crying in a way, and the figure is actually shedding a tear of gold. And the strings are wrapping around the afro, kind of like constricting it, kind of saying that you, while we will view you as a spectacle, you can't wear certain hairstyles, you can't do certain things with your hair, and we only want you to like put a relaxer in it, put a weave in your hair, and be presentable. You can't vary from the common type and the Western beauty standards. And so that was really something I wanted to touch on. The Western beauty standards was because we are often kind of put into how we should dress and how we should act in our, get a nose job to make your nose smaller or use skin lightening cream. And we're confined by these Western standards. And that's what the white strain really trying to tie us into that. But that we just, that is not something that we're not from, Western Europe. We're not from, a culture in which we have straight hair or whatever. We can straighten our hair, but that doesn't mean that we should constantly do it. It damages our hair and it's not something natural to us. And that kind of concludes my artist talk. And so we can kind of get into questions if you guys have any.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Summer, for shedding some light on your work and the inspiration behind it. I want to open the floor to our two panelists. We have Lear and we have Layla, who are both students in TMS, who you had the chance to meet. But they were both very eager to talk with you about your work and to ask you a few questions. So we'll begin with Layla.
So, hello. Uh, During your presentation, you already touched a little bit on each of my questions, but I want to get more in depth with some of those answers. So my first question is, who inspired you, or if you had multiple inspirations on who inspired you to start creating art? Was it like a teacher or another artist with a kind of similar theme, I guess?
Okay, that's a good question. So I get my inspiration from looking at a lot of different contemporary artists, and that kind of shaped like the groundwork for how I create things. For instance, the stylization of my faces. I get inspired by things that I see like anime and stuff like that, but I also get inspired from, other contemporary artists. I did kind of say that Ebony G. Patterson was a big inspiration for me, and she is. And I, well, I already kind of touched on that. So, her materials and all that kind of stuff really inspires me. Um, what was the other part of your question?
I was just asking for more like specific people, like a teacher or, another artist, which you answered this second one on that, or if there's anyone else not in that category.
My professors really inspired me. Shout out to them. They're like really awesome. Kevin Cow and Amy McLennan, they really helped me find my voice. And so they are like always an inspiration for me in the back of my mind, telling me to like keep going and, you deserve this. And so they also introduced me to Carol Walker. And she really goes out there and spreads these messages of these really hard topics, and that is something that I always aspire to be, because it's not easy to be so vulnerable with your work, and she does it like really just elegantly.
So my second question is what your creative process is like. What steps do you take going from, first drafting, like when you come up with the idea, to when you decide that your work is finally finished?
Okay, so I usually start off with a sketch. I kind of have like, I guess, more like a narrative in my mind when I create. For Jam, Grease, and Pomade, those were actually more of like experiments, but I knew I wanted to experiment with like the color black and how black actually is seen as kind of like a negative thing or whatever. And so I'll take that and I'll kind of sketch something, and then I will just kind of go for it. My process is kind of, I'll describe it as like a little chaotic and a little messy. I just like to really just go get things. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, I can always try again. But from there, once I get like an idea, and once I'm done experimenting, I'll kind of say like, okay, this went good. Should I make more pieces? Should I kind of shift off into another topic? Feedback is really important for me. So if I kind of feel that if someone's looking at a piece and they're like, I don't really get that, I don't really get an emotional response, I'll try to make my next piece even stronger.
My third question is, where would you like to take your influence as you progress through your career? How do you want your viewers to be impacted by your work? How do you want them to describe it to other people who may not have heard of you or have seen any of your work before?
So I really want people to, like, my call of action would be to look at how we are viewing this kind of like commonality and the average person, because the average person doesn't even look like, the actual average person. And so I want people to start being advocates for diversity, and seeing that, oh, hey, like this model is labeled as this, but it's not really how these people look. And that will kind of hopefully spark more of a conversation, and there's already a big conversation around it, but hopefully that'll spark even more conversation around the fact that colorism and racism are so prevalent in like TV, the movies, the magazines, makeup, advertising, everything. It's so prevalent that it's just ingrained in us. Just we'll see something and then we'll just say like, oh, I guess that's fine. It's not fine. And it's important to raise your voice and say, no, that's not okay. And so when people talk about my work outside of, the museum and gallery space, I definitely want them to talk about diversity, and I want them to understand that even though you may not be Black, these things are prevalent in every race and every culture. And it is definitely something that we need to continue to fight for.
So my fourth question was, when did you realize you wanted to become an artist, and how did your family and friends react to you telling them if they believed you would go into like a more analytical career like economics or finance and you chose art? How did they react to that news?
Well, I knew I always, like, my parents were very supportive of me being an artist. I always had like, I always just loved playing with colors like crayons, and, you know, I was always like tactile with Play-Doh and stuff like that. So as a kid, I've always been interested in art. So my parents kind of like knew I was going to be an artist. I've been drawing since I was like in middle school and making work since I was really young. So they were like, okay, she's gonna be an artist, but like they were always like, be cautious, you don't know if these people are just like gassing you up or something like that. So they always were kind of on the cautious side. And when I was like, I'm gonna go to college for art, they really were supportive of me. But it was kind of like, do like the art thing on the side, but like get a graphic design like job or something like that, and I did it for a year and I absolutely hated it. And so I kind of told my mom, I was like, I'm just gonna do sculpture. I'm just gonna change my major. I'm gonna do it because that's what I love, and I'll become like a professor or something like that. I'll go get my MFA, I'll be in school, but I'm gonna do sculpture. And they were like, okay, that's fine, so they've always been pretty supportive, and my siblings have as well. They showed up to my openings and stuff. So I'm really thankful I have a really awesome, supportive family.
And my last question is, it goes a little more into sculpture, but why did you pick sculpture as your medium, and specifically clay rather than, painting or wire? What stuck out about it? Like about it stuck out to you?
Um, I don't think I can even explain that myself. I just know that I really, really love like working with clay, and I'll work with other not just ceramics either. I work with like polymer clay and air dry clay. There's something about it. Like I love working with my hands. It really kind of just goes beyond painting because I'll paint and I have done paintings. Um, and I do love it. I think there's kind of like, okay, I love doing paintings, but I really love like creating with my hands and being hands-on. And it's like kind of like it's kind of like I make a sculpture and it's like my baby. It's like, it's a creation of mine and I just love being surrounded by them. And that's just something that is so like magical to me. You have that block of clay, and I think this happens for a lot of artists. You have the raw pigments or raw materials, and then it just like shapes into something completely different. And I think sculpture for me, I'm able to kind of make a bigger statement with that versus like making like doing paintings and stuff like that.
Great. I'm Lear. I'm going to ask you a couple questions now. And so there's so many, but I guess my first question will be like, what was your process in making the pieces currently on display in the new garden variety? How did you make them? How long did it take to make? Because I know clay is complicated and there's a whole bunch of different techniques. So I was kind of just curious if you could weigh in on that.
Yeah. So I was like really struggling. The pieces, jam, grease, and pomade, those were actually created for my exhibition Black Magic and Don't Touch and Crown as well. So those were created for my exhibition Black Magic. And I was really struggling with like, do I create like full body figures in like ceramics and how is that going to go? Because I only have like a couple months to make work. And so I was really like confused about the statement I wanted to make and how I was going to like really address, blackness through clay. And I knew I made a decision that terracotta was something I wanted to do, but I found that like red terracotta was too red and that might make a statement that was like beyond what I was trying to make. So I decided to dunk my figures in black. And that's where I really got inspired to do like blackness and using India ink to wash my figures in black. And what I actually do to make the faceplates is I have a mold, and it's actually a mannequin mold. And so I'll press the terracotta slab of clay in there, and then I'll pop it out and I will fire those, and I'll have a couple. And so basically, it's like an assembly line. I kind of just have these faceplates lined up on a table. I'll either have like spray foam or like India ink, spray foam India ink, and I'll just kind of like go crazy and, just I'm like, do I want to make this an afro or do I want to make this a like just kind of like a weird combination of things? And so relaxer, since that is like separate from that process, with relaxer, I knew that the spray foam worked and the India ink worked, but like how can I take that beyond just like continually making like afro pieces, even though I really enjoyed them? So with relaxer, I had decided like let's make more of a statement with like other materials like hooks and string. And what can spackle do, because there is spackle on there? How can spackle make a statement as well along with the spray foam? And those kind of came together to be a piece that was really about struggle, and I really enjoyed the kind of process going through that.
Great. And so what was, I guess, going to being an artist, going through art school, what do you think was the biggest struggle that you had? And what do you think was your biggest success? Like, what was that process like? Because I know it's very hard to make it as an artist. So how did that work for you?
I felt like going through like art college, it was like, what am I gonna make? It's like, you make so many projects in class, and then it's like, oh, I need to make work for myself. And that was like the hardest thing because I was really struggling again with like my blackness and like, what am I gonna what do I want to make as a statement? And so most of the time I would just kind of like be in this creative rut. And I experienced burnout a lot. It was really tough for me to make work, and so that was a really big struggle. But Black Magic was probably my eureka moment because I had to push through that burnout. And when I did, I found that I really enjoy creating, using spray foam and unconventional materials. And so it just made me want to make more. And I kind of just been on that train of like, okay, let's do this next and let's try this and that.
Mhm. Okay, and I think you may have already touched on this, but I had written it down. So what is something that, like, what are some experiences in your life that have shaped your work now? Like, events, moments that you were like, this caused me to create this, or something kind of like that.
Yeah, so I mean, the new garden variety, all my pieces in there, regardless of what I created them for, were really just they were really created to shed light on the experiences that I had as a Black woman. People telling me that, my hair isn't good enough. I don't have like good hair. And good hair and bad hair and hair politics for Black women was just like, that was something I really focused on in my exhibitions because, like, we are often told like your hair isn't good because it's nappy, or you have 4C hair, which is like really coily hair, and we're told like that's not the good hair type you want. And so that really sparked me to like, okay, so I need to talk about how, like, people have told me like my nose isn't, I don't have a good nose or whatever, and all those like petty things that people have said, like, I've they're long past and I don't care about them anymore, but it is something that we, like, as Black women, we have to like struggle with a lot. And people telling us these things, like whether we're in the workplace and people are like, you can't have braids, they're not clean, or dreads aren't clean, and whatever. So those experiences, and also hearing experiences from other people, like even my mom telling me things, my grandparents, people online, social media talking about how they had to experience like discrimination or whatever. All those experiences culminated to create pieces that you see in the show.
Well, that was all of my questions. Is there anything else you just want to say, or?
I think we had a really great conversation.
Well, I'll jump in for a second. Thank you, Summer. Thank you, Lear and Layla, for your wonderful questions. So there's some questions in the chat, and one of them is actually to the students. The question says, um, can you shed some light from your point of view on the process of selecting Summer for the TMS artist this year? How many applications did you review? What was the selection criteria? How did you all decide? So I don't know, Layla, Lear, you want to tackle that?
Yeah. I think we had like 15 applications, 12, somewhere around that number.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah. And so we had different applicants. We had them all submit a artist portfolio, and then we kind of were basing it off of on relevance. We were basing on how it would fit in our exhibition space. Some general criteria, like, does it fit at CAM, and does it fit like the message we're trying to do? Do you think other people will be engaged in it? Is there a way that we can draw the audience in? So those were the ones we used a lot. But Layla, you can jump in on this a little bit more.
Yeah, a lot of what Lear said about, got artist statements, we looked at portfolios, we kind of sifted through them, and we went through a lot of voting processes, just slowly narrowing the pool down until we eventually picked Summer. But a lot of it involved like relevance. Does it fit with other projects at CAM, and does it fit with, current events? So a lot of just how does it fit with the rest of the museum and the overall reputation of what CAM usually displays as art.
Thank you, students. Well said. Ask more questions coming to the chat. I have a question for you, Summer. So you mentioned some artists that you were inspired by. Do you have any other artists in your family? Or do you have other family members who may have taken up art at some point?
My grandparents are like, they are jazz musicians. So I mean, they're artists in their own right, and that's pretty awesome to me. And I also have an aunt, and she does quilting, and I believe that one of her quilts was like on the cover of Oprah's magazine. I believe so. And so I've had some artists in my family, not like sculpture artists, but the creative gene definitely runs through our family. Yeah.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Quilting is such an important African American tradition. And so it looks like you're creating your own tradition with using hair as a motif.
Yeah.
You ever thought about that?
No, I have not thought about it that way. And, that I think that's really cool because, my family that comes after me, they're going to see, like, and I hope they're inspired by, you know, um, my story, and maybe they'll create art of their own.
Absolutely, absolutely. They'll look at Big Cuz Summer and say, "Hey, I want to be like Summer, Grandma, or Big Mama so and so who does jazz." There's another question that came in for you, Summer. It says, Summer, you mentioned being from a military family, which usually means you moved around a lot while you were growing up. Can you talk a little bit about how that experience may have influenced you as an artist?
Yeah, so I always describe being like a military kid as kind of like growing up in a utopia. Like when my dad was stationed in Germany and we were there, we lived there for about like 5.5 years. And those were from like from first grade to like fifth or sixth grade or something like that. And so those were years that that was my childhood, and that really shaped like who I was in my perception of the world, because I thought like, everybody loves everybody, and there's this diverse community, and so many people it's like a collective society. And people love to help out, and so many people love to say like, oh, hey, like you're going out of town, like let me watch your kids, let me do this and that for you. So it was like a really open community. And when I came to the States, I still say that I experienced culture shock, because some things I'm just like really baffled by, that, people are so closed off here. And I think that kind of like frustration with growing up my like teenage years here, it kind of influenced me to talk about, how my experiences have really affected me. And later on through my work, I hope that I can kind of address like some of these aspects of how individualistic our society is, and how we're always so quick to judge people. Like I was judged for like wearing my shoelaces this way, or having like wearing like graphic tees all the time or whatever. Like it was just really like petty and dumb things that I was judged based off of. And when I talk to other military kids about it, they're like, yeah, I don't understand why people are like that here. And so if I grew up here, I think I would probably still talk about the same things, but those things really still baffle me. And so I talk about them in my work. Like, I'm like, why do people say that, my lips are big or whatever, when that's like the trend now? So, um, yeah, it really did help shape like my ideas of what is community, and what is like why people judge. And if the average people look like this here, why are we still talking about this person and that looks like none of these people? So I'm glad that I had that military experience, because it really did open my eyes a lot more and allow me to create work that talked about these things.
So, and I think what I'm hearing you say also is how important travel is, to get out of
Yeah.
your comfort zone and see something different, right? What were some of your favorite things about Germany? Like, what were some of your
Oh my,
favorite places to go?
I'm so homesick. It's not where I was born, but I'm so homesick of that place, because I love the Christmas markets. Those were like really fun. It was like an outlet. So, you kind of go out, and like it smells like Christmas. There's these pine scents, and the nutcrackers are like everywhere, and everybody's just kind of shopping. And I really also liked, since I lived on a military base and we also lived off base for a little bit, the fact that like everybody just kind of knew everybody, but like in a good way. They weren't all up in your business, but they were definitely willing to support you. And I just love that community aspect. I miss that. I miss being able to walk everywhere. When you're living on base, everything is there. I just, there's so many things that I missed about that society. And, I'm trying to find it here in the States, and I kind of found it in Kansas City. But yeah, I really did love the community, the events, and the food was really great too.
Oh wow, food, huh? That's I bet it was great. I bet it
Yeah.
was great. You mentioned Kansas City, and so congratulations on all of what you've accomplished over the past very recent years. You've been such an inspiration to so many young artists. What's next for you, Summer? What's on the horizon?
Oh, I am really like, I'm really thinking about going beyond just talking about my experiences. I really want to make my solo exhibitions like an experience. I want to show like, you know, my story, but I also want to be more involved in like showing West African culture. So I want to create an exhibition, hopefully in the future, that you're able to actually sit down and kind of eat, the food that we eat, and from like terracotta bowls. And I'm hoping that I can take clay from like the places that, when we walked off the boat, like North Carolina and Hannibal, Missouri, where a lot of like contraband slaves were. I'm hoping to take clay from there and create those bowls, create those figures, and really connect with my roots, really connect with a lot of other people, and not just talk about Black women, but talk about Black culture as a whole, and hopefully shed that light. So I'm going to continue to apply for exhibitions. I'm going to continue to travel around and experience a lot of different things. And yeah, I'm just hoping to, you know, continue to show my work.
That's outstanding. I want to open the floor again to the general body here who have come to hear you speak. Are there any further questions or last questions for Summer before we conclude? You can just type them in the chat if you have them. Well, as we wait for one or two more questions, we were remarking earlier about the shadow under relaxer, and how some of that kind of looks like the continent of Africa, kind of has a map look to it.
Yeah, let me
So
show it.
maybe that's a precursor to some of your new work.
Yeah, I got to connect with my roots a lot more. So, hopefully I can do that.
Yeah. Are you going to show us the shadow?
Oh, I thought, Zoom. I thought I was showing.
It's okay.
It's,
That's okay. That would just
yeah,
encourage people to come to the gallery to see what you have
yeah,
and to see that little connection there.
yeah.
Any last questions for the students, from the students? Any comments you want to make?
I guess all I have to say is I wish you the best of luck with your art. And
Yeah, just thank you so much, Summer. I always love hearing you talk. Your presentation is always so illuminating, and I just know you're going to go real far. And we support you, and I'm so glad we chose you.
Thank you. I'm so glad you guys chose me. This was like been a big inspiration for me, to like, people want to hear my story. And I'm so ready to continue on showing and telling people like, this is what I make, and these are my experiences and these are my stories. So, I thank you guys a lot, and it was so fun working with all of you.
It was great. Thank you.
That's so awesome. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. We are so fortunate to have the new garden variety in our education galleries here at the Contemporary Art Museum. You will see Summer's work here until February 22nd. The students did a phenomenal job. I want to just take a moment and applaud all of the students that we had in that program. We had some phenomenal students, and I want to see if um, I'm going to mention their names here. So the new garden variety is organized for the Contemporary Art Museum St. Louis by Katian Cade, Ruby Faulkner, Hala Jones, Finn Canick, Ivy Canick, Elizabeth Keeley, Annie Lee, Cosette Mothershead, Leah Rose, Layla Smith, and Catherine Welch, with support by myself, the museum educator. I want to mention something before we conclude. In our discussions about all of the 16 proposals, it came down to two artists. The students were challenged with talking about issues that were affecting Black people with issues of colorism and all the things you mentioned, Summer. And we had another artist who the issues were about gender, and identity. So both of these works were very important works. And so I want to presence that in the public space by saying it was a really difficult decision because the students were challenged with making a decision, on what they felt was what they wanted to convey this time around. We had phenomenal applications. This summer's exhibition doesn't mean that the other works were not good. It's just really a culmination of the hard work that the students put in selecting summer's work. And so if there aren't any further questions, I want to just thank you, Leah. Thank you, Layla, for your time. Thank you, Summer, for your time. And thank you to everyone who made this exhibition possible. Take care.